Good morning, everybody. This Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders. Council's standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. The recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting, and Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recordings may also be used for training purposes within the council. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. Do we have any apologies this morning?
No apologies, Chair.
Do we have any declarations of interest from any members? At this point, we normally do the minutes, but we don't have minutes. We'll have two sets of minutes at the next meeting in January. Is that from everybody? Yeah. Sorry, Councillor Howard. So I'll report this area mid-year reports, education. Who's going to be reporting?
The Cabinet members going to the introduction.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. And again, thank you so much for the invitation to Chair Scrutiny. And we're really pleased to present a mid-year report where we can evidence that all our actions and objectives are currently green, and we're confident that these will be delivered. We are, however, very aware of the anticipated £2.1 million overspend, and this is the first time we've experienced an overspend in the last 7 years. However, half of this forecast overspend is actually linked to ALN transport. This is demand-led and it's a statutory provision. The increase in cost is due to unprecedented market costs, which are out of our control. The remaining 1.1 million overspend is linked to out-of-county spend. Again, costs that are out of our control. The service area is the lowest volumes of pupils. However, the cost per pupil has grown beyond expected inflation. However, moving on, let's be positive. Some of the highlights over the last few months are as follows. We've launched a revised and enhanced professional learning package around second language Welsh for our schools. In addition to this, we've worked to improve accessibility and understanding of our immersive Welsh provision. Estin recently inspected this and we're very complimentary with the provision. And we've just now launched a film where students and families who participate in the programme explain how this has enabled them to access a Welsh medium school midway through their education career. This is particularly important as it gives children the freedom of choice if they realise they prefer to be educated through the medium Welsh. And as we all know, families are continuing to move into Newport from across the English border, who are very keen to immerse themselves in becoming Welsh and being part of our Welsh family. I think the word Cynefin comes to mind, and that's what they perceive. They want to be Welsh and be part of being in Wales, and they want their children to attend Welsh medium schools. This provision enables this to happen. It's something that we are really proud of. The film is going to be on our website as part of the admission page, and I really recommend, as members of the Scrutiny Committee, you take your opportunity to have a look at this because it's well worth watching. It's quite an emotional film to see actually how proud these children are of actually learning to speak fluently in Welsh in a very short period of time. As school governors, we're all aware of the new attendance strategy that's been launched to support schools across the city. This brings together the advice and best practice that schools should adopt to maximise improvement in pupil attendance. We're looking for a consistent approach across all our schools, and especially in clusters, which then benefits whether siblings and families who both have the same issues in regards to attendance. We all know that attendance is not about improving outcomes and opportunity. It's fundamental in regards to safeguarding. And it's an issue that we really need to focus on because we have to be confident that our children are safe. And we know that happens when they're in school. The service area's anti-poverty work has now been successfully merged with a wider council anti-poverty strategy. And this will strengthen the overall approach to support families in the work we've been undertaking in our communities. I'm really pleased we now have a grand council for our school-aged pupils, and it's now functioning well, having met twice, and it's continued to grow from 20 to 50 school representatives. And this is our opportunity for pupil voices to be heard on strategies and policies that we wish to implement, especially in the context of learning, health and well-being. Provision for children with additional learning needs remains a priority, and currently review is being undertaken of all our learning resource bases to share best practice and a consideration of how provision can be enhanced. As part of this, it's great to see the Newport Primary School now being opened, which has expanded to a 3 form-entry primary school with additional LRB places. The Uphill Gwentley site will see the Ysgol Cymraeg Gwentley moving in, which is currently at its seedling base in Clean. This move will also enable us to have our first Welsh medium LRB provision in Newport, again, much needed and very welcome. Consultation is now completed on the expansion of Ysgol Berndiru, our ASD school, and this will help increase provision by 40 further places, and this will be based in Clean. Much needed and will help to reduce pressure on our schools. On the subject of new schools, St Andrew's Primary is about to receive its keys, and the new junior school will start, the children will start moving in next week. And the children are gradually moved in, so it'll be a formal opening of the new term. I think that's something we can really celebrate, because again, that's an area where we have an enhanced LRB provision. And as we all know, we're about to go out to consultation on the new primary school proposed for Bettis on the Newport site, which, if agreed, will be for children of primary age in that community. It's so important that we ensure there's equitability in what we do. And a new build not only enhances learning opportunities, but it promotes aspiration and improves outcome. Finally, can I give my thanks to the education team, and especially to Sarah. Her leadership in education outstanding, and despite the ongoing financial pressures, we can be confident that our children in Newport are excellently supported, and an incredible amount of work goes to ensure there is equity provision and care for our children in Newport. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Member. Before I bring members in, is there anything now that Commissioner? Okay, Councillor Cleverly.
Thank you, Chair. Am I speaking on the report now?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. My first thing is Millbrook and Mono School. That's absolutely brilliant news of the amalgamation, and I can tell Sarah now the feedback that we've had on the Bettis News page on Facebook. Some of the parents are moaning they got to walk from the top of Bettis to the bottom, and that's the only feedback I've had so far. But it's absolutely brilliant news. A few questions on that is about the staff when they move. Is there any team building event for when they get together or whatever? And also for the TAs, because some of those TAs have been in that mono school for quite a long time, and it'd be a really big upheaval for them. And also what support there is for staff. And the last question on Millbrook is ALN, how many places will be available for when the two schools are together? Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks for that. Those are really interesting questions that you raised around the well-being of staff. I'll address those in the first instance. So it's so important that there's a really healthy transition to amalgamating the schools. And the reason is that the two head teachers are already communicating and talking about those plans.
Excellent.
Nothing, of course, can be we're still at a consultation stage, and so we cannot formally start to work together in terms of being one school, because that's not right in terms of the fact the consultation is there.
Yes.
Transparent process, and everybody's views have got to be taken into account before the cabinet member indeed makes the decision about the amalgamation. So we have to be careful of that. But across Newport, our schools are encouraged to work together anyway, and that's really
in the cluster.
Both on a graphical footprint. Why wouldn't you work together and have a close relationship? Because you've got so much in common, especially when children from the Bettis estate primarily, they're all of the children, aren't they, that belong to Mono and Millbrook, and there are natural connections there, and why duplicate workloads when you can share them. So for instance, you could be looking at the new curriculum, you could be looking at all types of different themes within schools. You could be sharing attendance, good practice, things that work in one school that don't in another. So we'd be encouraging that type of working anyway. And I think we can strengthen that and take the opportunity to do it. But when we do get to a point, if the decision is made to amalgamate following the consultation, there would need to be a formal action plan of really strong opportunities to make sure that there was a run-up to the transition and amalgamation. So, for instance, shared inset activities, and making sure that both schools felt that they were highly valued and they both taken their best practice to join together. You'd want to make sure that there was feeling of that balance, wouldn't you, between the two schools being equally celebrated. So that's going to be important for the future. But in the meantime, with this news that's come out around potential amalgamation, staff will naturally have reservations. So they might be worried about what their posts look like in the future, etc. So our HR team have been into both schools to do some informal drop-ins. And it's basically, you can ask us anything. And that face-to-face availability of HR support means that whether it's lunchtime, before school, after the school day, those staff members can ask confidential questions and put their minds at rest potentially. So that's been a very important aspect of the news that's come out in the last couple of weeks, and that will continue to be offered over time. So that we're reaching out as well as staff being able to contact their HR colleagues as they normally would. And in regards to the ALN provision, it will be the same as it is now. So there'll be 30 places. And what does that look like, Katie? So Katie's our head of inclusion, and is there 15, Katie, in foundation phase?
They're split with, there's 10, in foundation phase, 20 in the key stage 2 outputs. They'll transfer over then to the new site, but we will support them in that transition as well.
Excellent. Thank you ever so much. I'd like to thank all your team, Sarah. You've done an absolutely brilliant job in everything and in gaining this school for us. I know all the councillors are really pleased about it. Some of the parents might not be, but they get over it in time. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beth Davis, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple. Could you explain to me, I was being a bit stupid really, but what is the attendance strategy?
So the attendance of late, there's been a lot of new publications around good practice in attendance that have come out nationally for Wales. There was a thematic review which was completed by Estyn, and it highlighted all of the best practice across Wales. Okay. Also within Newport, we've got a set methodology of how we work at school level, an explanation of when education welfare then step in and support schools. And we've got information to share about the fixed penalty notices and how we intervene on a statutory level. There's also information that we need to share around family engagement work and how we can make sure we're supporting families as early as possible. So what we wanted to make sure is there was a one-stop shop to explain all of the best practice and the things that a school should do rather than hunting round for information. We also recognise that over time, there are new attendance leads in schools as well. So we thought it would be best to have this one-stop shop, this piece of advice, the attendance strategy, which described everything, because we were keen not to lose all of the best practice that's happened previously. We're recovering, aren't we, from the pandemic in terms of the attendance culture, but we're now in line with the All Wales average and just above in primary. And we believe that if we continue to hold our nerve, that we can improve that attendance rate, because what we're doing is right. And after all, pre-pandemic, we reached the top quartile in Wales for attendance for both secondary and primary. So we're trying to keep it into this one document so that nobody's got a hunt round for it. It's a clear expectation of what the local authority expects and what you can do at school level.
That's lovely. Thank you for explaining that to me. Another question goes back to what Cabinet Member said earlier about everything being in green. Looking at it though, I noticed that in some areas it was only 25% or 40%. Why are they categorised as green and not amber or red?
Because the RAG status means that it's on track, and that's what you would expect it to be completed at that percentage at this time of year. So everything
Okay,
that
that's
can
lovely.
has been done, and that's why it's green.
Okay, thank you very much for explaining that to me. Thank you, Chair.
No, it's quite bring members in, so let's do a quick question on Welsh education. In particular on, is it the Maithrin? So we have a number of children that go there. How many of them progress on to Welsh medium education, and how many of them leave and go on to English education?
Depends which time frame you look at it over. Okay, so at the moment there is certainly improvements which can be made between the transition from Maithrin to reception at school age. That can, when you think about the collection of Maithrins across Newport, it can be down to a specific issue. So, for instance, we know that some non-maintained settings, their businesses have unfortunately been unsuccessful over time. So it is about a specific Maithrin rather than the concept and the principle of good transition rates from Maithrins. So we've been unfortunate that one specific Maithrin can be pinpointed, which hasn't had a good transition rate at the moment. So we certainly want to make sure that we learn from that and we can secure the transition rates in the future. So there's that aspect. And I think the other thing in the back of our minds as well to remember is that it is based on parent choice. So sometimes parents can quite legitimately choose a Maithrin because it's quite local. And then they have to because it's convenient in terms of drop-offs with work and their working lives as parents. And then they can make a different decision for reception. But we're trying to make sure that when they've taken that brave step, they've got that amazing opportunity, that they do continue with Welsh language education. But we've certainly got a bit of work to do, Councillor Brenda.
Is it that in certain areas of the city where there might be a Maithrin, but there's not adequate provision for nursery education in the English schools, the parents use the Maithrin there to provide the nursery education and then move on to the English schools because there's adequate provision in the English schools at reception?
I couldn't begin to guess the reasons.
But there's no sort of if you look at the city as a whole. So let's say we got a Maithrin in Shaftesbury. But there's not adequate nursery provision at Crinder. Would parents maybe go to that Maithrin in Shaftesbury and then move the children to Crinder, whereas normally they would have gone to Crinder had there been adequate provision?
I got no evidence that I can triangulate to make that link.
You look at that?
Certainly.
Trevor.
Member mentioned about airline transport. 2.1 million overspend. How are you going to control that and reduce that overspend? Rather concerned by that, if it's that amount, what's it going to be like?
Well, I would say that what I would do is I'd be looking to work with other service areas that are also have got transport as part of their service. So, for instance, adult services, children's services, etc. And we are setting up a working group to consider what that could look like. I can't tell you anything else at the moment about what the answers might be, because that's yet to be investigated. But what I can tell you is those costs were quite sudden in terms of the escalation of the commissioned taxis, buses, etc.
That's what concerns me, that parents seem to be moving children from one school to another and then getting a taxi there.
No, that wouldn't happen. So there are controls in place. So for instance, with the children that have additional learning needs, it would be our statutory duty to both place them where we thought the provision was suitable for those pupils in the city. So we make the placement, and then they would be entitled to the transport to meet their needs to get to the provision. But with mainstream transport, if a parent moves their child, they wouldn't be entitled to the transport.
No, I'm not talking about
Yeah.
mainstream, I'm talking about parents who apply for additional learning needs and then they move to another school. That's when they get the.
Very few and far between with those schools, because it's generally only children that attend the resource bases or the special schools. So you don't tend to get the movement. But there are a couple of examples for specific reasons with the complexities of the child's needs.
How are we going to control that?
Very difficult to control, because actually it's about the fact it's the availability of those taxis and private transports firms. So we have very little control over it. But I think that if we can work together with other service areas and consider what we might do as a whole council organisation, that will stand us in better stead. But I can't give you an answer to what that will look like at the moment.
Another question, Chair, and that is attendance. You mentioned attendance just now. Looking at good practices in Wales, what about good practices in other places of the UK? Are you looking at those or just concentrating totally on Wales?
I think we're concentrating on Wales.
I've got more, Chair, but other members.
Councillor Harvey?
Chair, just on the back of what Councillor Watkins have said about the 2.1 million overspend, it's huge. This might not be very popular, but if a child with ALM issues receives a mobility component, for argument's sake, shouldn't that money be used to ferry the child from home to school and back again? So why are we picking up the tab? And it's not going to be politically correct, I know it's not. However, if the state is giving you money for that child for mobility reasons, a no-brainer, they should be paying for their fares.
It is difficult because legally, as an education department, we have to provide transport if we're placing young people in special services. So myself and pupils, we also, there has been an issue with wheelchair specific transport, and we've really struggled to commission that and making sure that they're safe. So there's really high costs on specialist vehicles like that. And what we've seen is the cost of day-to-day transfers have increased exponentially. So I agree that that's probably something we should look at, but
Yes.
it's not, I don't think it's anything that's in our control. But what we have got is a personal transfer budget for parents. If they feel that they can transport their child in their disability vehicle, we will pay them then per mile for that. So some of the parents of our special school children do take us up on that offer because they want to make sure their child is safe coming into school and they're with them for that transition. But obviously petrol prices have gone up as well. So
On that, we will be looking to review our travel allowance prices, the petrol prices. We should have the mobility vehicle new base for fuel it. So we're going to try and look at our prices so that it becomes more affordable. What we don't want to do is disadvantage parents.
No.
By the costing too much to even want to be able to transport their own children. So we're going to look at that.
Lisa, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It was partly related to what Councillor Watkins has talked about as well. So I've got to keep away from the educational side of it. So as Sarah said, this pressure in the budget was pretty sudden. So this is essentially a budget that historically there's a slight underspend associated with it. So it's been a significant swing, and it's primarily due to market forces, and as you've seen with quite a lot of the stuff we're dealing with at the moment when we're setting the budget, it's service demands and increased costs associated with the service demands. So this is a victim of that. I suppose for reassurance, so this is a forecast to the end of the financial year. So it isn't the actual overspend today. All right. So that was the point I wanted to pick up when people come to the Watkins and said. So there are a range of things going on at the moment. As Sarah said, you know, this isn't the only budget this is impacting on. We have a range of transport contracts in place, and they've all been impacted to some extent. And as Katie said, there are specialist vehicles associated with this. So actually, there's more demand and less supply. Therefore, that's pushed the price as well. So we're looking at ways in which we can try and do that more cost effectively. Inevitably, though, when Cabinet proposes a budget to council in February, there are going to be some pressures in there associated with this that we'll need to deal with through the budget setting process, because the world has changed from what it was. So, yeah, so it's going to be added into those, you know, those additional pressures we're going to need to deal with to some extent.
Yeah, it's just when I'm not dismissing the child, but when a child is affected with those kind of illnesses and needs, etc. If the parent has a disabled vehicle, if you like, to get the wheelchairs in and out and all the other equipment, it seems ridiculous to me that the council then have to pay for transport when there's a perfectly good vehicle that can transport the child to or from school in ownership of the parent. What I'm trying to say is, if it was my child or my grandchild, I would take them myself and I wouldn't put the onus on the council. Pay for the transport. You have the vehicle, you should be made to use it. Because it is different now. COVID have just wiped out the budgets out. There's only so much any local authority can stretch their budgets to cover the cost of these. And sometimes we have got to put a cut off and so it's no. Can't do the second. So thanks, Chair.
Councillor Jenkins. Councillor Marshall, I assume you've probably got quite a few. So do you want to do two? And then we have five. So if we do two, go around and we'll come back to other people the opportunity to come in.
Yeah, so the first one is, how is the council addressing the increase in financial pressures and complexities of airline provision? I know we've noted about the including the transport side of things and out-of-camp replacement, but whilst ensuring equitable access to high quality services across all settings.
So for ALM provision, that's the second part of the overspend. But Scrutiny have been on a long journey with education services, and you'll know that we've been really focused on reducing out-of-county placements, the number of them over years, because we know they're expensive. We want to make sure the children are part of their own communities, they don't have to travel long distances. And I'm pleased to be able to tell you that we've got the lowest amount of children in out-of-county places in education that we've ever had before, significantly reduced. However, the price has escalated beyond any type of forecast position. So some settings put their prices up by 33%, some by 50%. So it is eye-watering. But what we've also got in place is a quality assurance visits that will happen, because we have to make sure that our children are both safe, thriving and engaged in these out-of-county placements. It's about the well-being and the security of the young person, the child. We're also making sure that the local authority is achieving best value for money in those out-of-county placements. So we will go and look at, for instance, if the provider is saying in their contract they're providing 2-to-1 support or horse therapy or something really bespoke to the child, we go and do the checks to make sure the child is actually receiving it. And what we've noted from the quality assurance visits is, first of all, we know our children are safe. That's very, very important. But we're also looking at how we might replicate those out-of-county provisions locally. And we've taken many decisions over recent years to increase the amount of local provision and working with local partners. Some good examples of working with Catch 22. There are examples of working with Sporting Chance, who provides high quality provision, and they're subject to the same quality assurance processes as the out-of-county providers. And that is far more cost effective and is local, which means that you don't need the high cost of transport. etc. that goes with it. We can do more frequent visits. We get good communication from those local providers. And we've also got other types of alternative education in the schools. So, for instance, the Aspire provision. It's worked well and is good value for money. And there's 36 places across 3 Newport secondary schools. And the retention rate of supporting those young people is excellent. So it's those type of local provisions that have replaced the out-of-county, but unfortunately at this moment in time, those providers have escalated their costs to something that we would never have expected. In the future, we are actually already doing some planning to look at how we can replicate more local provision to avoid the out-of-county places or to bring children back if that is palatable to the families, the child, the young person, and that meets their needs. You've got to be able to meet their need before you even offer for those children to come back, because their needs come first, of course.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair. So the other one is somewhat similar. Is it what mechanisms are in place to ensure consistent quality and inclusivity? I know about provision and said about specialist provision. There is concern somewhat within the mainstream side of things about maybe particular funding addresses challenges which have been addressed and I think highlighted over time, you know, in the last couple of years within mainstream, but also within specialised schools. How is the feedback from pupils and parents of basically trying to look at improvements to that, but also looking at things like early on assessment provision and picking up on A-level provision that might be required earlier as possible?
The main bit of feedback tends to come from head teachers in school settings. They are really supportive of the ALN transformation and tools that we put in place to equip them. But old schools will report that there are significant challenges in supporting the number, the volume, the capacities of pupils within mainstream. But yeah, we need to do that. And we're trying to secure as much equitable provision as possible by making sure that we have consistent training in place, that we have geographical ALN codes. So you have a cluster ALN code that's supporting other additional needs coordinators in the cluster. We're making sure that there's a smooth transition from primary to secondary. We've got a really good system, which is called EduKey, where children's provision is mapped onto a system over time, so we can look at the quality of provision and the local authority is able to advise and support on whether they think that that's appropriate or it needs to be further enhanced. That is also a useful mechanism and tool then for secondary as well, because you were able to consider the profile of a pupil and the packages they've previously had, because you have to make sure those packages continue as they carry on with their education. It's helpful if you move schools. We spent a long time working on early intervention and support, and one of the really at the moment is our early years team are working with non-maintained settings. So if as a parent you decide that your child's not going to go to a school nursery because it suits you to have to be able to work and leave your child in a full-time nursery place, we're making sure that the practices and systems of the non-maintained settings link in with the schools ones, so that there's the smooth transition and the learner is put central from a very early age. We've also got an early years educational psychologist working with non-maintained settings, Flying Start. So again, you've got that smooth transition of early intervention and prevention and support families in need, and that children's needs are identified much early on.
We also do work with the Education Achievement Service as well to get that joined up, because what we're seeing are more complex young people coming into the system. So it's about supporting schools to change their provision to meet the needs of children. So that's one of the work that our early years teacher advisor is doing with the AS, because our early years teacher advisor, as Sarah said, sits over non-maintained settings, but also mainstream nurseries. So she holds network meetings with other sets of staff, looks at training opportunities for them. We hold joint conferences for them. So it's about upskilling the staff, getting the expertise there, but having professional support on their journey. But it is change. and the complexities of children coming through, they're not going to change. So it's about how mainstream schools can change their provision to maintain as many young people as possible. So we've also supported schools with our communication tools, which I think was on the service plan last year that we developed to give clarity for schools on what provision is required at each stage of the graduated response. So we're supporting LN codes and school staff to be able to implement that within the schools.
So I think that's a good job, that answer. Within that, so we have the young people that obviously are going to mainstream, because it's most likely going to happen in the mainstream division. Is there supporting mechanisms to support the mainstream school to avoid things like or to support them in infrastructure because of things like they may have to adapt the school in order to address like flight risks and things like that there, things to incorporate that? Is that also supported as part of that?
It is, and over the last 3 years we've had an ALN capital grant which we've utilised to make building adaptations to support young people with ALN. That's included extending disabled toilet facilities, ramp facilities, sensory rooms, that type of thing. So where there's need for the young people, we've identified what built-in changes need to be required and then utilise these grants that have come through the system to refocus and make those changes.
So we,
It's a city pot.
yes, we had £1 million this year and £1 million last year. And we're hopeful that we will get some further funding for next year as well. So we're waiting on Welsh Government to confirm that. But we've been able to do a huge amount with our targeted money. Yeah, we're just about to go into phase 3 of our accessibility strategy.
There's some really good work going on there, and I'm particularly pleased to hear that you are sort of working with private nurseries to ensure that children have the best possible start, that there is a focused and structured system in place when they move from the private nursery reception. Children know what to expect, and that's really good news, because when my children were in nursery, there wasn't the provision of school nurseries in those days. That's a long time ago. But now you have that, and that's absolutely fantastic, I think.
And it's amazing working with those local businesses as well, because it's like working at an open door, and they're so pleased to work with us and to have some advice and support. So it's a real pleasure, and it benefits everyone.
Any comments on that, Cameron?
No, I just completely support. You've also got to be aware, of course, Esty will go in and inspect those privately maintained nurseries. So there's an expectation in regards to standards. So the businesses who are actually running private nurseries, they actually really value that level of support, because they know then they're achieving the standards that are expected of them. It provides a consistency and continuity of support for those young people, but it also enables their business to function. But it doesn't also mean when there are challenges and queries about how a private nursery is functioning. I've certainly had those meetings with Sarah and Katie. We've gone through the issues, whether it could be something like hygiene, it could be about dietary requirements. It will be brought before me to discuss what next steps and process can take place, because it's all part of the portfolio. But it means that I am confident that our officers have got a good understanding of our local provision, which is privately funded.
Is this something that's unique to Newport?
No, it's not, but we've commissioned places, but everyone's relationships have strengthened over the years. And one of the new things we've done this year is, because we're going out to tender again for those education placements in non-maintained settings, we've written a quality assurance tool which explains to every non-maintained settings what we expect and what support they can get, so that they know exactly where to pitch things, because education provision is different to childcare.
Yeah.
So we've got to make that abundantly clear.
Yeah. Right. Councillor Cleverly, do you have any further questions?
Yes, Chair. Thank you very much. Bear with me, I'm just looking at my notes. I did have one on the transport, but I think it's already been answered in that respect. But the other thing I was going to speak about transport is because we said there was an overspend on transport. We've had loads of buses going from Millbrook up to Bringlass, and also we've had buses going from St Andrew's School to the Pilgwentley School as well. Well, the old YMCA building. And did that take part in the overspend? I was wondering.
No, it didn't, Councillor Kennedy, because we had contingency budget lines in place because they were quite easy to forecast those costs over time. So we kept them quite separate, and we also recognised there would be an end point to some of those buses that were required. So we knew St Andrews, it was for a limited amount of time because of the new build. So that cost will now disappear and will be helpful. But no, it wasn't mixed up with, it wasn't one pot with the ALN transport.
Excellent. The other question on St Andrews, when are they actually, have they moved back into St Andrews now, or are they still attending the YMCA?
They're still attending the YMCA. The new building is due to be handed over next Monday, which is the 16th of December. So the children will still continue to attend the YMCA until the end of term. They've got an inset day next Friday. So next Thursday will be the last day at the Connect Centre. And then from January, the children will return to the St Andrews site.
Brilliant. A fresh start for the new year. That's excellent news. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ben Davis, do you have any questions? I know you have to be away today.
No, I'm good at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. You mentioned out of town placements and the cost. Is the 2.1 million overspend, does that include that forecast as well? That's included in the forecast at the end of the financial year.
Include the 2.1 million potential overspend. Half of that overspend at 1.5 million is linked to the increase of costs in inter-county provision.
I'll let somebody else go. I got another two, but towards the end.
But he's not there, so he'll have to be you.
Nice to see the new schools coming off stream. And it's nice to see them increase in the attendance in regards to the pupils, and the number of pupils being taken in. So what provision is being planned in the long term, medium to long term, in regards to secondary schools? Because I'm rather concerned, as I think Llanwern is one school that got vacancies. We've got the Welsh school in Dyffryn, which is obviously got vacancies. Basic is being expanded to accommodate more pupils, but the rest are full. So what in the long term or medium to long term are we doing to ensure that there are going to be enough placements for the increased primary schools which we've got at the moment?
Question.
Should I take that? Okay, so obviously you'll be familiar with what was originally the 21st Century Schools programme, is now the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme. So Band B officially came to an end in March of this year, but obviously we had some projects still to complete at the Newport and at St Andrews. And we've now moved, Welsh Government have now moved away from kind of defined 5-year programmes into what they now call a rolling programme. So they're looking at a 9-year period of investment. So we were asked to submit our strategic outline programme for the next 9 years to Welsh Government by the end of March. And in August, we received confirmation of what had been approved within that. And our strategic outline programme will be published on the council website in the next few days. So there are three, whilst it's a 9-year programme, there are three-year phases. And we are focusing on the middle phase around expansion in secondary provision, because our projections tell us that we are short in terms of those numbers coming through, as you've alluded to, Councillor Watkins. So within the strategic outline programme,
we are looking to expand English medium provision by 700 places across the city and Welsh medium provision by another 500 places. So those actual plans will emerge in the second and third phases of the programme, and we're still finalising what that will actually look like, but we've got the commitment from the council and the match funding from Welsh Government to invest that money into Newport. So we are looking at what that will look like, but we do have plans.
So that's over the 9 years.
Yes, yes, yes.
It's quite a dichotomy really, because we've actually got full birth rate in Wales. If we do, and you look at other local authorities such as Powys, and they're struggling because they've got schools with only got 20, 30 people, and they've not got that movement of people in. As we are rapidly expanding the city with that, because we've got industry which people are willing to move to. We've got a data city, we've got so much. There's so many attractive prospects in Newport. We've actually got people opting to move here. I think added to that is obviously people living in Bath, Bristol, etc. They look at house prices, they look at our council tax rates, and it's a very, very attractive proposition. But even now, we've got people moving from London, into our new housing estates. So we've actually got an expanding population, not necessarily by birth rate, but by those families that are moving in, which is why earlier I talked about our immersive wealth programme, because we have got that movement of families who actually want to settle here. They see Newport as an exciting place to be. It really is an expanding place that people really want to settle. It's like, it's the most rapidly growing city in the whole of Wales. And we've got to be cognizant of that and understand that in our preparation for what we provide in education in Newport. It's got to be fit for purpose. So we're fully aware, doing our best.
There was a phrase many years ago, wasn't there? Get atable Newport.
Get out of Newport.
Get atable Newport.
It is.
Because it was
Yeah.
the train links and the
Yeah.
motorway, everything was fabulous here just for
Absolutely.
getting about smack in the middle.
Yeah, and to get out into the countryside, it's just phenomenal. We are beautifully, stunningly placed for people to settle. We've got so much to be proud of. We really do.
One final question, Chair. The whole education system in the city. What are the two main challenges that you have?
Capital backup maintenance. That's difficult in the macros when it costs council assets shared by the whole of Wales. And the continued complexities of ALM that go through the system.
Sorry, just other assets. So it's really, I'll read both your questions. So if we were in Powys, we could use our strategic outline plan to look at how we could do school reorganisation to get rid of old estate and build new schools. But we can't.
No.
That's just the simple challenge we've got. So ours is about increasing capacity rather than trying to deal with some of the schools that we probably, in an ideal world, would look to rebuild.
But there comes a time when school is too or not economically viable to be here.
Absolutely. And Millbrook is case in point,
Exactly.
and you just have to make a decision around doing that. So
So really, I'm trying to get at what other schools city.
You may have seen, you will have seen, obviously, there was a report in the local press last week about our plans to actually amalgamate Monroe and Millbrook. So obviously Millbrook has been demolished, the children have been accommodated off-site, but that has offered, whilst that's been difficult to manage, it has offered us that rationalisation opportunity, because Monroe itself is in, is operational as a school, but it's in, I would say, poor repair. They've suffered a fire recently, they've had flooding, they've had some vandalism. So it offers us the opportunity, because of the better, believe it or not, and the Malpas kind of area is one area where there is a decreasing pupil projections in the city compared to other areas. So there are surplus places in both schools, there's backlog maintenance in both, which offered us the opportunity to go for a completely brand spanking new school building, fit for 21st century learning, net zero carbon. So we're really aspirational around that. and that's being funded jointly by the Council and Welsh Government through the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme. If we had a bottomless pit of money, Reece, we'd probably look to do similar in other areas, wouldn't we?
Yeah, I absolutely. I think, if you look at our corporate risk register, sets and highways are two of the things that are right up there on it. And, we're managing within defined budgets and dealing with those because they're both assets. Even within that, we've got a heightened sort of review and assessment regime in place for our high risk buildings, so that we understand when things are going wrong before they go wrong, because I think that's a really important thing. The reality is, and Sarah said, it's an issue across Wales, it's an issue across the UK. We've got assets that were built in the 60s with a 20-year life expectancy on them, and we're still using them.
Yeah, we do have a good number of schools that are aging, don't we?
Yes.
So Bono must be approaching 70 years now. Must be, because I went to Bono.
70 years.
Yeah, yes, I think there are some buildings that were built a long time ago, but with an expectation they would last a long time. There are some buildings built a long time ago which had a life expectancy on them, and you see those right across the UK. So fortunately, touch wood, we weren't really impacted by things like RAC. But we've got a challenging state. So I think that is, and it's in the corporate risk register, and as Steve said, the other one around ALN, and that when you saw social services, I expect they were saying some very similar things around advocacy.
So
placements with
The
social
two main things are repairs and ALN.
It's demand for AMN,
Yeah.
because we can mitigate and make sure that we're supported in terms of, supporting practitioners to as much as we can. But the demand is
Yeah.
But we're fortunate, I believe, Chair, that we don't have any concrete cancer. Any of the schools.
You refer to the RAC issue.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
RAC issue.
We identified RAC in one primary school. That primary school was forced to close, move to blended learning for 1 week. Last autumn term. Mitigation has been put into place, and that's been regularly checked, and there are no concerns now going forward. So it was an isolated incident in one school, and it wasn't throughout the school building, it was in a specific location.
No, and just for clarity, RAC in itself is not an issue. No, RAC where it's open to the elements of the press as an issue.
Yes.
This particular
It
was
was
an internal thing.
Yeah.
So it was,
I'm an age who wouldn't expect it either.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Fortunately, you replaced Betty's comprehensive school then. You might put the bill there.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Deb,
Just to say well done to the whole team, because it's lovely to read a report that's so positive. Because I just get up to there with all the negativity all the time. So it's been quite refreshing really to read this, so well done.
Yeah, great report. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. So we spoke about the increasing of Welsh medium education, and the question is about the ALN attachment with that. So with the expansion of Welsh medium education, what specific strategies have been implemented to develop the ALN provision that will go behind it with expertise and capacity within those Welsh speaking settings, and how will the success be measured within that?
So that's some really good news. This is worth celebrating in our area to South East Wales. So Deb and Katie will talk to you about this, but this is outstanding practice.
So first of all, in terms of a physical capacity perspective, the first Welsh Medium Learning Resource Space will open in September 2025 in Ysgol Gymraeg Nantgwenlli. So obviously, Kilgwenlli, Councillor Jenkins will, Kilgwenlli has moved to their brand new building up on Menllikeith Road. That's vacated what was the former Kilgwenlli Primary School building. Ysgol Gymraeg Nantgwenlli, currently in a temporary location in Caerleon, will move there. It's a very large building. Currently, it was over two-form entry. This is going to be a two-form entry Welsh Medium Primary Schools, so it's offered us the opportunity to look at other provisions. So they will have a Welsh Medium Learning Resource Space there in the primary sector. which will open in September. So that's really good news and something that we've been waiting for a very long time. When Katie and I will talk about provision rather than capacity.
So as local authority, we've seconded a teacher advisor who was still the Elen Cohen School Cymraeg Casnewydd, an excellent practitioner. So she links with all of the Welsh schools to look at upskilling and training needs around ALN support. We're also looking at working with the new head teacher of Newton and Wentley School now in January to look at staffing for the LRB and training packages to support. So we've talked about it being a growing provision in line with the growing provision of the school, and that gives us the opportunity then to work with the appointed staff, assess their needs and look at what specialist training we need to give them and opportunities. So we've got the plan, it's just, oh yes, and obviously with the support, we've also got Ysgol Brynderw, our autism school. We fund outreach provision from our YBD, and as part of that is bilingual. So we've got Welsh staff from Ysgol Brynderw who support the Welsh schools with autism development training and specific support around any individuals. So what we will be looking at is how they can support the development of the specialist skill within our LRB as well. So we're utilising the support we've got. We do know that there is a blue course challenge around Welsh schools. So we are assuming that we're not going to get necessarily a highly skilled person at first. We want someone who knows ALN, has got a good relationship with young people. We can work with and develop those skills with them.
But as part of our Welsh and Education Forum, which meets once a term at least, and then there are subgroups that meet separately to solve problems and to, make sure the barriers are broken down. There is an ALN subgroup, and one of the national issues has been that there hasn't been sufficient Welsh language resources around ALN, whether it's screening tools for teachers or whatever. Now, Katie is sat on a national group to link into that, to make sure that our head teachers are heard and there is action that's being taken. And our Welsh medium head teachers are superb at the problem solving. They help. So a good example is when they allowed one of their teachers to come out on secondment to support the bigger picture, the support capacity of ALN across Welsh medium schools. They really, really are in it and making it work. But our provisions like the EduKey system that I talked about earlier is available. For instance, in Welsh, everything we do in Newport is available. That's pure possible. So we've made it work.
And there's another part of the Outcome 6 work was training 2 members of staff within the Welsh medium sector to be team teach trainers. So restricted physical intervention trainers looking at positive behaviour management, that type of thing. So we've got one person trained to train in the secondary school, one in the primary school, and they do joint training now for all the other Welsh medium schools. And all of the training around that is in native Welsh. So we've worked really hard where we are able to fund translation, or we commission any services in, they have to be bilingual. But as Sarah said, there is a huge national issue with the lack of intervention resources and assessment. So we are working with Welsh Government around that. And our supported teacher advisor is linking and trialling some of those things for Welsh Government for us as well. So
and on the back of that question, do we know roughly what numbers are like in comparison to the English mainstream, in terms of those that would require the LN provision at the moment, to understand the likelihood of the increase and what the increase would be like?
the numbers have been pretty low over the last 5 years, because we did the data for the projection. I think it's been about 4 million people that have come out in the last 3 years that have parents have chosen to go into English medium LRBs, for example. We've also funded some pupils who parents wanted medium Welsh. So those youngsters then are in out-of-county placements. So just over the border, we've got someone in Cardiff school, the Welsh medium, because that they could meet that young person's need. So where possible, we try to keep them within the Welsh medium. It's parental choice then.
It's just a for perspective and things like that to understand the situations. The last question then for me, Chair, is how is the council ensuring that the implementation of national policies and laws around the ALN is translating into tangible improvements for learners, particularly in closing achievement gaps for vulnerable groups?
I think that you might want to keep your eye on the estimate reports coming into the 20th of December, and that will answer that question in full. I can give you reassurance that we're meeting every statutory obligation and go beyond. Actually.
Are there any other questions from members? Trevor?
In regards to the schools within Newport that were in special measures, are we happy with the, okay, we know they're out of special measures now, are we happy with the progress which they're making up to now?
We meet with all schools for professional discussion, and we go through their school development plan. We look at a range of indicators. We're not Estin. It is Estin's judgment about whether they're satisfied or not. And we take a different focus now around just looking at outcomes of young people. It's broader than that. So the world's changed in terms of what we look at. We look at the quality of monitoring and evaluation that happens in schools, and whether schools are looking at the right types of exercises to know their schools well and evaluate their progress in different areas. So, for instance, are they making sure they're listening to learners? Are they looking at books? There's progress in books. They look at planning. Are they looking at provision and opportunities? So we talk to schools about their methodology. We speak to schools about how they're arriving at their priorities in their school development plan. We ask them questions about those. We sit with the chair of governors as well as the head teacher. We talk to them about local priorities. One of our local priorities is around addressing racism and taking some next steps around racism in schools. We talk about outcomes where we can. So, for instance, at Key Stage 4 and 5, with secondary schools, we haven't got the old-fashioned outcomes in primary schools. That's why we look at pupil progress. We also have our school improvement partners that go in as well to verify some of the school's work. Where there are schools that need extra support, we set up a team around the school. So I don't think a local authority can ever feel that everything is absolutely fine. That wouldn't be right across 57 schools. We're providing the necessary support in a bespoke fashion right across the city for any school that needs support at a specific time, because any school, again, will go through a chapter of uncertainty or requires something special. And so what I can tell you is that we know our schools so very well, and our school leaders are so incredibly open and welcoming to allow us to go in, that we're able to work with them and identify and prevent any issues we feel. That is not a guarantee for anybody, is it? Because actually, sometimes you can have a different view from the inspectorate. But to the best of our knowledge and ability, any school that needs support is receiving it.
Going on from that, Chair, no, I won't ask the question in case it's still. Thank you.
Yeah, just on the back of that, I've got a team around the school, of my school, I'm sure not, and they're very supportive, very, very good. It's like, they feel like you've got a safety net under the school, and things can go wrong. And I won't say you can be told lies by your head, but you can. And it's good to have the education department there as a safety net to pick up the slack when it happens. That's what I want to do. But it's nothing to be frightened of. If your school has got a team around the school meeting, it's more to be welcomed than anything else, because it's not a stick to smack your head. It's how we can help you to get a better idea of what's going on.
Just to ensure that we are monitoring schools to ensure that they don't go back into special measures.
Yeah.
That's what I'm concerned with. Not just going over the
You've got an after
base, it's getting
What would be reassuring for you is that if a school came into a category, we wouldn't just walk away and leave it on its own, because we recognise that they would need continued support over a period of time, because they're still adjusting, and any school could slip back into a category, couldn't they? And so we continue with that support over the long term. So some of those schools that may have previously been categories we're still meeting with, we still have regular reports from our school improvement partners about those schools, and those school leaders are more than happy to work with us. It's, you know, the approach that we take is supportive, because that gets the best out of everybody in the system, and it enables school leaders to feel safe, secure and honest in their approach.
I suppose I can give a very real example of that, because obviously I'm chair of St Julian's, and it was special measures, and it came out special measures, and they continue to have that additional support. And we had the inspection this year, and that's in the public arena. It got published in beginning of July, and it's absolutely moved from being a school in special measures, coming out special measures, to a school that's now considered to be outstanding according to testing. So it's about that consistency of support, and that scrutiny and support still continues. I've sat with very recently at a professional meeting as chair of governance to ensure that the school's still on that right trajectory. It's important that we know where schools are and schools are moving. So that's a very
I just wanted to make sure, Chair, that they are being monitored, not necessarily the ones that have been in special measures, but those which are
Absolutely.
possibly close to getting into special measures. By making sure that the education officers were aware.
I want to just piggyback a little bit onto Welsh education and in our secondary schools. So I've been on a number of governing bodies of high school and secondary schools over the years. One thing that always came through at governing body meetings was the difficulty in finding space in the timetable for the teaching of Welsh, and to identify what other subject can be reduced or pushed aside to provide the space for the teaching of Welsh. So are we confident that secondary schools do have adequate time in their timetables? Because for us to say, we've got this 1 million Welsh speakers policy, haven't we? So for us to say that I can say good morning or good afternoon in Welsh doesn't mean I can speak Welsh. Just means I can say good morning or good afternoon. Well, exactly. So I just concerns me. So is there adequate space in the timetables? Are we giving children the right opportunities to be able to learn Welsh properly, not just as an aside issue? Where you get a GCSE for writing your name on the top of the thing.
When you look at timetabling, and there's a new 14 to 19 learning measure as well, which is even broader curriculum. It is the governing body and head teacher decision about how schools timetable their subjects and to what extent. So not looking at just Welsh alone, I will come back to the Welsh question, but for any subject area, there can be a minimum expected amount of time, and there can be an amount of time that you study a subject which can support better outcomes. Okay, but that is also linked into the quality of the teaching as well, isn't it? Because you spend as long as you want on a subject, if the quality of the teaching is not good, then actually the outcomes might not be good. Yeah. Now each school has got to make sure that they consider their learner population and what's best in terms of timetable for their learner population. So it's got to go back down to the individual schools of how they address the timetable issues. What I will be able to do for you, if this helps, is to give you an overview, if I come back to scrutiny, around the number of hours that schools have in their timetable for Welsh, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's right or wrong. It can be about whether that's bespoke to their own school needs. Would that be helpful?
Yes, would.
Okay.
It also depends on how many pupils, like when they're taking their GCSEs, how many are going to be taking that particular course or that particular lesson.
No,
all have to go.
Yeah, no, I know that, but it depends on how many is in the year group that want to actually take it.
All our secondary schools in all other secondary schools, pupils follow Welsh second language courses.
Yeah.
And simply assess qualification at the end of the 2-year course as well. So when I say all, I think at the moment we're on about 81% of the cohort across the 8 English medium schools who sat the examination at the end of the 2 years. That is slightly higher than the regional position. Obviously, it's not 100%, but there are specific reasons why individual pupils in those schools did not sit the qualification. But we are slightly higher than the regional position in terms of people sitting the qualification.
Okay. Just one other question I want to deal with needs. So I'm just wondering, people that go on, young people that go on into education training and then drop off 2 months into the course. How do we monitor where they are, what they're doing, and whether they're actually progressing into an apprenticeship or some other kind of work, or whether they just sat in the house on the police station?
You know, before that, we talked to Scrutiny about year 11 needs. Success, the fact that they were best in Wales. But actually, we look at year 12 and year 13 needs and beyond. But there are a range of staff who look at that across the councils, because some of those staff would be in education services. Naturally, we'd be looking at statutory school age. We've also got links with Colin Gwent. We've got links with Careers Wales to look at the destination data. I think it's the destination data and the drop-off aspect that you'd be interested in. And again, that might be helpful if perhaps we provided a background report and Scrutiny on destinations.
Yeah, that'd be great.
We could then address, if we formulate what we do, who does what, and perhaps what it looks like.
That'd be really good. And that also helps us also with the youth justice.
Yes.
Because it actually sees where
You see where they're
going, they're disappearing to.
Yeah.
Right. Jan, do you have any more questions?
From me, Chair, thank you.
Lovely. I think Councillor Davis is gone. Any more questions here from the panel?
Yes.
Okay. Lovely. So Samantha, you move on to recommendations, please.
So Chair, I need to do a recommendation about looking at the whole city picture to improve Welsh medium contribution from my 2 section. I've noted our 2 requests for information about the number of hours schools timetable for Welsh and the destination data that Sarah mentioned. Have we got any other recommendations or actions? Is there anything committee want to add?
Anybody? Stephen, anything that you would like to?
No, just following up about about the Welsh medium side of things there, and about the point about the potential of having to move from Welsh medium to English medium and what we're doing to try and avoid that. Essentially, I know this won't be done. Just any updates really.
Any an update really on the budget, Chair, on how we're managing?
I think that will come to us anyway. Is in January the budget meeting, so we'll have a good idea of where that's going and hopefully in the right direction. Other than that, thank you all very much for attending.
Thank you. Thanks all.
So next bit is the advisor reports.
Yes, I'll be happy to forward that, Chair.
Yeah.
So if we look at the actions first, obviously we've got some new actions to add to the table, but we've managed to complete a few. You'll see there are a few outstanding still. I'm sure I noted last time in previously, and a lot of them are longer term actions, so nothing to worry about. The top action about organising the setup on the safety technology. Following our site visit, Comstate to Whitehall members invited them to come down to the library. There's a coach there, so if the committee are happy for me to mark that as complete as invitation for members to go and have that training as and when, I'll mark that as complete.
Can you just say on that myself and Trevor went down, and it was incredible the bits and pieces that they have there. The only thing that concerned me a little bit about was that people have to pay. So it's not free.
Not part of the package.
It's not part of the package. So you have to pay. It might be only £5 a week on some of the stuff, but you still have to pay. And you generally find that the people that are using this kind of thing are sometimes
Mobility issues.
mobility and the most vulnerable that we have. So I think that's something that we should look at really about the affordability of it and whether there's something that we can do to ensure that the people that can't afford it are able to get it.
It might be worth looking at it, when we consider the budget meeting, it might be part of that.
Yeah.
Also, extent. It's really nice to-
Stephen, you're looking puzzled.
I'm thinking that I'm sure there was some grant provision there for those that can afford it, and it depends on the affordability of the individual. So I think there's those means that's
That didn't come across, did it, Trevor?
I think that's something
No,
to try and get.
I didn't come across, but it's, you know, somebody that's on anything.
Mm.
What I
But it needs testing.
I'm trying to do for with help, I'll ask the question to the head of adult services about its testing for the technology, and I'll try and get an answer to the committee. Bringing nicely to the next point, that our next meeting is the 14th of January, that'll be our budget meeting. And then finally, I haven't been able to see the recommendations to the table. These have been sent to officers and I'm still waiting for a response at the minute by the trees again.
Can I ask one question, Chair?
Of course.
Can we, in future, when people are online, leave their cameras on? Because it's really irritating me when they could be going in the kitchen making a cup of tea, walking around in shorts and a vest. They need to be in the meeting.
I'd rather that people actually came here, but
I would, yeah, but if they're not really able to get here, if they could put their cameras on while the meeting is in course, so they can be seen as well. It's the same with full council. We're all sat in the chamber and we're raising our hands to vote or not, whichever. Online, you've got no idea who's voting what.
no, you haven't.
So that I believe the cameras should be left on there. When it was new and we had to turn them off, that's fine. It's a better system now, so I do believe the cameras should be left on at all times, not just for us, for every meeting right across the board.
I don't know whether I've actually got the authority to do that. Does have to come from.
You wouldn't have, we can certainly request it.
They do, I know they do for planning and they do for licensing.
Yes.
Because they are
There's
statutory bodies.
yeah.
I don't know, but I agree with you 110%. But that would have to come from.
Is it legal or the leader or
Probably
Democratic
services.
services,
through down services?
through the constitution.
Yeah, I think if Catherine might be able to correct me, but in the constitution, it says that you request but not enforce it.
Right.
I think it says that we turn cameras and mics on for bandwidth issues or with internet and that kind of thing. But you can certainly make the request and then it's in the cameras on.
Requesting democratic services. That's probably the
Because
best.
we're actually looking at the constitution now.
Yeah, because it will take the life out of me.
The other thing, going back to what we said in regards to finance, in regards to the equipment. How does that work with DFG, disabled facility? Because they're normally free to the individual or the building or whatever. So surely they could be financed through that type of thing.
I'll certainly ask the question.
Other than that, I think we're done. Thank you all. I thought that was a really
Yeah, really interesting.
a lot covered, a lot of information.
Yeah.
A lot of food for thought. Thank you all very much.
And it's Christmas, everyone.
And you all have a nice Christmas.